So what we're going to make today is off-mandrel work. So it's all with borosilicate. We've got a bit of coloured borosilicate, which is the Asian teal. We've got a bit of clear rod and tubing. So I'm starting off with 26 by 1.4. Obviously you can make it as large or as small as you want. And I'm going to do a little balloon with a basket. So this is the basket. You do the basket first, then go to the balloon, then we join them together. So to begin with, just using, this is a mid-range miner. So I'm just using the miner. And I pull the point on the 26mm. I'm just going to neck it down where the point is to make it a bit easier to take off when it's all finished later on. So you'll notice I'm wearing Kevlar sleeves. You might find if you've got sleeves it's pretty important to put them on because there's a lot of radiated heat. The tubing, the teal tubing we're working with later on is about 4mm wall thickness, so you get a lot of heat off that. If you haven't got Kevlar sleeves, just pop a pair of socks on your arms and just cut the feet off the socks when they're really old. So, and roll them up your arms. And so I've just necked it down a little bit, turn the flame up, pull the second point. The tools I'm working with today, we've got a glass knife, we've got a pair of Tungsten Tweezers, we've got a couple of Reamers. That's about it really. And then we've got some, as I said, Asian tube, 26mm tube, and I've also got some 12mm rod and 4mm rod. That's it, there's not a lot to go with it. So I'm just going to pull this second point. Just take this away. Pop that on one side, and then just with the thinner 4mm rod, I'm just going to open up this. Open it up to give me a little sort of like basket cup shape. So I'll just take this away and then keep heating it. Pull it out, get it nice and thin, and then I'll just use the reamer to bring it out nice and parallel. And then, just with the tweezers, I'm just going to go around and put a frill around the edge. You could use a rake or a poker for this if you wanted to. So, just keep that warm, put this down to one side. So, just a little bit of an extra, I'm going to put a little guy inside the basket. And so with 4mm rod, just form a little ball on the end. This will be the chap's head. And then we'll just take another piece of rod and we'll put a couple of arms on him. There's not going to be too much detail in this. After all, it's at 10,000 feet in the balloon, so you can't see an awful lot, can you? So we'll put a little arm on just under his head, so that's forming his shoulder. And that'll be holding onto the side of the basket, and then with the second arm, he's going to be pointing at something down on the ground. So, now I'm going to make him a little hat. So I'll just flatten this off with the back of the Tungsten Tweezers. And just pop this on top of his head so it gives him a little top hat. As his body is going to be inside the basket, we don't need to worry too much about legs and waistline or anything like that. So just heating the side of the basket and heating the arm. We're just going to join these two together. And then take off the 4mm rod to form the top of his hat. obviously we'll give him a little flat on his hat. So now we need to put some ropes or tensioning wires on, and this will join it to the balloon. So this is with a 12mm rod, and it's quite important that you keep the end of the rod quite clean, so don't try and melt any lumpy bits back in, because as you pull it into a stringer you're going to get a lump in the stringer. So if there's any marks on the glass, if there's any bubbles that you've just melted back in, get rid of them, and then just heat up a nice tip of the rod. And this first one, you're going to have to heat the tip of the basket, turn them on, and then outside the flame, and we're only going to pull this about 2 inches long, and just start to angle it towards the centre, and then again repeat. So we're only doing three stringers, 3 rods. Just caught the little guy there, so be careful. And again, heat the basket. And as you start to pull this second stringer, again angling towards the centre, and you want to be bringing it towards the first one. And I'll just get rid of this end because obviously it's pulled a little bit, and I don't want it to go into the stringer, because it will just cause a little lump on the string. And again, for the third and final one, same as before, heat the basket, heat the tip of the basket, and then outside of the flame start to pull your string off. And then all I need to do then is I'm going to melt these back so that they start to join together and they form a little ball. And then just let it cool down, angle it down. And that's the job done on the basket now, so we'll put that to one side. So for the balloon, we're going to start with the teal Asian tube, which is, as I said, 32mm, and it's a little bit thick, so start carefully with it, just with pre-warming. And you want to pull a piece about 4 inches long for the point. So I'll pull the first point to begin with, and then just gently warm it through. I mean, even though it's Boro, you're going to get a bit of, if you go straight into the flame with such a thick walled tube, you can get a little bit of a thermal shocking and cracking. And then let's just pull a second point. If you want to work with a thinner tube, if you want to work with 22 or 24mm tube, you can do that, you just end up with a smaller piece. And then obviously if you want to work with clear glass, there's all different sizes of tube and you can work in clear glass. Maybe sandblast the balloon before you add the rig in, or maybe even paint it after it's cooled down. Loads of options for this, and then at the very end we put a glass loop on, a little bit of fishing line, we hang it. You can either hang it in the house or hang it in the garden, whatever you want to do. So I'll just pull this point out on the tube. Down, and I've got one I pulled down earlier on, and again just pre-warming it so as not to shock it and get any cracks. I'm just going to straighten up this point as well because it's a little bit off centre. And so I'm going to aim to heat about half of the main tube. Just turn this round. So the open point is in my right hand, and then I can just heat the right hand side of the point and then just blow it up. And I'm aiming about sort of 3 to 4 inches bulb on this. Let the glass flow together, sort of pull itself in. So you know it's thickening up, but it is already quite thick, so you don't need to worry too much about the wall thickness of the balloon. And at this point you start to feel the heat, so you've got a heat on the face, you've got a heat on your forearms, and this is when Kevlar or a pair of socks comes in quite handy. And when you're ready, give it a blow. Remember, it's not a race. We don't have to do this one go or 2 goes. It takes you 2 or 3 times of heating it, blowing it, melting it back down, making sure there's even heat all over, and blowing it a second or a third time. That's okay, no problem with that. And then, just going back to the half of the tube that's still not been melted, I'm just going to start heating that. And I'm just going to pull that away and make it around about, pull it down to around about sort of 15 to 20 mil. And I want to try and get a nice flowing line between the main bulb of the balloon, sorry, the main bulb of the balloon. Cut, go. So I want to try and get a nice line between the main bulb of the balloon. And when I've got it down to around about sort of 12 to 15 mil maybe, I'm just going to seal this off and take it away. The point in my left hand is still the hollow point, so it's not going to pop or anything like that. And now I need to open up this end. So let's get rid of that. And again with the Reamer, I'll just go on to the minor torch. So again with the rake or your poker, or what I'm doing is just with the edge of the pair of Tungsten Tweezers because they're quite sharp. Just go around the opening that you just opened up and just put a frill on it really. And then if it's not the best opening, you're sort of hiding it as well. And then at this point I'm going to take the 4mm rod that I've got again and just clean up the end. And I'm going to put 5 or 6 little, almost like little tags, just on the balloon. So just using the 4mm rod, heat the side of the balloon, heat the rod, get a real nice good join. Remember the wall of the balloon is about 4mm, so it's going to take quite a lot of heat to get a nice flowing join. And then round a little bit and a second one. And ideally I'd like to go for about 6 little, almost like clear tags, and from these you're going to pull the stringers down. This just makes it so much easier rather than trying to get molten glass onto the side of the balloon, and it helps you so it doesn't misshape the balloon's ball when you're doing this. Now if you run out of room and you end up with 5, that's perfectly okay. If you run out of room even more and end up with 4, don't worry about it. But what have I got? 2, 4, going for the 5th one. And so I've got the final 6th one in place. And then just remembering, you know, it might be Boro, but it benefits from getting a good all-round heat again, where you put these little tags on. And just go down again. And again, back with the 4mm, I'm just going to create a little piece of rod and just tack it onto the bottom of the balloon and then come across to centre it back up again. And then I can go to the top of the balloon and take this point off and then put a more solid and sturdy glass rod on. So just centre that. So I'm just going to remove the point. Just melt it back in so you can get a nice sort of round shape to the balloon top. Put that down, and then with a piece of rod, so this is going to be, actually we'll use this bit. So we'll use a piece of 4mm rod, just clean the end off. So I think this had a little bit of a teal on it, and then just get a nice, good, strong seal to the top of the balloon with the rod. And again, try and get it as central as possible. There we go. So we've made that centred. And just, and again, a good warming around the balloon, because like I say, although it's Boro, you can get, it's thick wall Boro, so you can get flame cracks and stress cracks, and then just make sure you take off the sharp edge where you've just held it. And then back to the mid-range torch. And so now, just like you did with the basket, you're going to create 6 strings coming off. And again, it's important to remember to clean the end of the rod. If there's any bubbles, any uneven bits, are just going to form the string to be lumpy and bumpy. So you heat them about 10 or 15 mil of the rod, get it nice and hot, and then warm the clear tag that you put on the side of the balloon. Tap it on, get a nice good seal, wait 5-10 seconds, however long you need to, and then start to drag the point down. And again, you're going 1 inch, 2 inch past the bottom of the balloon. And this time I'll not let these sort of just drop off, and that cleans the end up. And so, exactly like you did with the basket, just repeat 6 times. So heating the tag, So we've got loads of different colours you can work with, not just teal, with cobalts and ambers and greens. And then you can put patterns on the balloon as well, so if you want to put a stripe of glass, you know, a white or a black or something, and then twist it so the balloon's got like a stripy pattern, that all works as well. So. And just when you're getting the stringers down to the bottom, just make sure you're sort of fusing them together at the bottom so they start to form a little sealed ball of glass. Got 2 left to go now. And with this it's going to be useful to have the kiln up and running as well, because it needs to go in the kiln. You've got a lot of areas that have taken heat and got cold as well, so have the kiln running and pop it straight in the kiln when you're finished it. Now I've just broken the stringer there, so I'm going to pull all of them back up. So I've just broken one of the stringers, so I've just sort of gone round and corrected a little bit from the top, so a little bit of heat. And then I'm going to put the final 6th one on, and I might need to actually, again, go around where the tags are on the side of the balloon and just heat them ever so gently and bring the stringers together and get a bit of movement there, so I can join them all together, and I want them to join in a ball. So again, just heat the tag, stick the rod on, and then outside the flame. And now I'm going to go down to the miner again. And just do a gentle bit of heat and see how, hopefully all 6 of the stringers will start to come together. I've got one that's sticking out a little bit on its own, so I just need to warm the stringer and let it come in, and then I'll go in the flame and just melt that in. And then there's one that's just not quite tapped on, so I'm going to do a tiny piece of repair work. Just with the 4mm, and just try and stitch it in. And then just start to heat it into a ball shape. Bring in your basket, and that's got a little ball on as well, so what we're able to do now is just start to melt the 2 balls evenly. touching together and just get a nice seal. And then as it's starting to cool down, we just need to make sure everything's square, which it is. And then obviously we need to get rid of this point here. And so because we thinned it down earlier on, it's going to be a little bit easier to remove. There we go. So there's your little borosilicate balloon, stringers coming down, little basket hanging off the bottom, and your top hatted guy hanging in there as well.